This is part 2, episode 77. After doing all of this, Wang Lin clenched his hands, causing the basin to morph into a container. The arm was now sealed inside it. At this very moment, in a location in Suzaku that looked like a painting, red butterfly was cultivating on top of a lotus. The area was surrounded by clear, blue water and luscious greens. There were even spirit beasts nearby. Inside the water were some carps with very long whiskers. Their eyes showed life. They clearly had gained intelligence. Red Butterfly was wearing a red robe, only the sleeve for her right arm was empty. Sitting on a lotus facing her was a very handsome, middle-aged man. He stared at Red Butterfly with tenderness in his eyes and said, "Junior apprentice sister Red Butterfly, I have given you the spirit of the Eastern Sea that will regrow your arm. Why haven't you used it?" Red Butterfly opened her eyes and coldly responded, "Every time I look at my empty sleeve, my urge to kill Seng Nyo increases. Until I kill him, my arm will stay missing. Senior apprentice brother, don't try to change my mind." Seng Nyo. A hint of killing intent flashed through the middle-aged man's eyes. Seng Nyo wanted to destroy my Dao heart, however, because he took my arm, not only was my Dao heart not destroyed, it is now even more complete. I'm glad that Mount Suzaku wants him to fight me. Red Butterfly raised her head and looked into the distance. HMPH, if it wasn't for Mount Suzaku, I would have already gone out and captured Seng Nyo for junior apprentice sister to kill. The middle-aged man's eyes were sparkling. Red Butterfly was about to speak, when her expression suddenly changed. A black line with a sliver of red inside appeared in her forehead and quickly spread. Red Butterfly's left hand quickly pressed on her forehead. Her face constantly changed colors as she struggled. After a long time, the black line receded. There was a deep look of hatred on her face. Seng Nyo is trying to injure me by refining my lost arm. Red Butterfly's left hand formed multiple seals and sent them to her forehead. After a long time, she struggled to stand up before sitting down again. She had a gloomy expression on her face. "Junior apprentice sister, I'm going to kill Seng Nyo even if it is against Mount Suzaku's orders. At most, they will just punish me by making me go into closed-door cultivation for 100 years. The middle-aged man's heart ached as he turned around to leave. Red Butterfly whispered, "Senior apprentice brother, if anyone is going to kill Seng Nyo, it will be me." Mount Suzaku sent out 2 messages about Seng Nyo. If you kill him, it won't be something as simple as 100 years of closed-door cultivation. The middle-aged man's expression was sullen as he sat back down again. However, he took out a piece of jade, recorded some information and threw it out. "I won't go myself. I'll send out some cultivators from those lower-ranking cultivation countries. That way, Mount Suzaku can't do anything to me either." Red Butterfly didn't respond. She closed her eyes to focus her attention on sealing in the black line that had invaded her. East of Suzaku, there was a mountain shaped like a bird. This mountain became known as Mount Suzaku. Mount Suzaku was the holy land of Suzaku. Everything that happened in Suzaku had to receive their approval. On this day, a white-robed young man arrived at the foot of the mountain. He was in a difficult position. He paced around the foot of the mountain for a while before climbing up the steps. Outside a palace midway up the mountain, the young man knelt down on one leg and said, "Disciple Feng Yushan seeks an audience with Elder." After a long time, a voice came out from the palace. "What is it?" Disciple was ordered by Mount Suzaku to send a challenge letter to Seng Nyo. However, Seng Nyo didn't accept it and delayed it by 10 years. Feng Yushan didn't dare to lie at all. The voice in the palace gloomily said, "HMPH. Seng Nyo really doesn't know his place. You can leave. Someone else will bring him here." Feng Yushan's forehead was covered in sweat as he quickly left. "Ziwu, go bring Seng Nyo here." As the voice echoed in the palace, a person covered in fog suddenly appeared. Ziwu lazily asked, "Dead or alive?" The voice from the palace answered, "However you like." "Okay." Ziwu turned around and was about to leave. However, just at that moment, a red light came down from the top of Mount Suzaku and entered the palace. The owner of the voice from the palace was surprised. He slowly said, "Wait." After a long time, a gentle snort came from the palace. "Forget it, you don't have to go, we will wait 10 years for him." Ziwu shrugged his shoulders and disappeared within Mount Suzaku. Inside the palace sat an old man, whose hair and eyebrows were now all white. He stared at the red jade in his hand and muttered, "What kind of background does Seng Nyo have for him to interfere 3 times? At this moment, Wang Lin was sitting cross-legged in the valley. Before him was a war chariot filled with spikes. Wang Lin stared at the war chariot with an unsettled expression. He tossed out the beast trap and the thunder toad landed on the side with a thud. The thunder toad's injuries had already healed, and its gaze toward Wang Lin contained a hint of gratitude. If it wasn't for Wang Lin's help, he would have died to the injuries from before. Wang Lin whispered, "Thunder toad, I'm going to take away the beast trap. If you wish to stay, then follow me. If you don't, then you may leave, okay?" The thunder toad nodded. Wang Lin formed several seals with both of his hands. The seals landed on the beast trap. A myriad of symbols began to spread out from the bracelet. In the end, a very strange thing happened before Wang Lin. The symbols formed rings with the largest one on the outside. Each ring was smaller than the previous one, and in the center was the beast trap. "Release!" Wang Lin shouted. Suddenly, the symbols began to spin. A sliver of green smoke came out from the beast trap. It moved through the symbols like it was escaping and entered the thunder toad. The thunder toad let out a roar and its eyes sparkled. The symbols didn't disappear, but kept spinning. Wang Lin didn't look at the thunder toad. Instead, he looked at the war chariot. His right hand formed a seal and pointed at the chariot. Black mist appeared on the chariot. A pair of eyes could be seen within the mist. A deafening roar came from the chariot, and the beast spirit of the chariot appeared. This was the smallest beast spirit among the 3 chariots. It had been sealed by Wang Lin, but now that it was released, it locked onto Wang Lin. Its head had 3 horns, the body of an ox, and the tail of a dragon. There was even a face on the tail. Wang Lin calmly looked at the beast before dripping a drop of blood on the beast trap. Then he pointed at the beast spirit of the chariot. The symbols from the beast trap suddenly shook, and turned into a ray of light that began to spin around the beast spirit. The beast spirit let out many roars as it tried to struggle, but the black chains came out of the chariot and locked the beast down. The light formed by the symbols landed on the beast's body and released a golden glow. The roars from the beast became even more vicious. Some of the chains broke, but even more chains appeared to keep the beast completely locked down. In the end, all of the symbols landed on the beast's body and settled there. The beast was no longer struggling, but its eyes were even more vicious. Wang Lin's eyes were still calm. After those symbols were done settling, he whispered, "Return." The symbols on the beast shined brightly. The colors of the symbols changed from golden to black as it flew into the beast trap. When the last symbol disappeared onto the beast trap, a new beast appeared on the bracelet. This beast looked exactly the same as the beast spirit of the war chariot. At the same time, the war chariot turned into a ray of black light and disappeared into the beast trap. Wang Lin took a deep breath before slapping his bag of holding and placing 8 top-quality spirit stones around him. The beast trap quickly flew toward him and wrapped around his right wrist. A force countless times stronger than the one he experienced with the thunder toad suddenly started consuming his spiritual energy. Wang Lin's body immediately began to shrink, and he started to turn into a mummy. However, his eyes were still clear. The 8 top-quality spirit stones around him shined brightly. A crazy amount of spiritual energy entered his body and went into the beast trap. This process lasted 3 days. 3 days later, the force slowly started to disappear. Wang Lin's body slowly recovered as well. One of the 8 top-quality spirit stones shattered and turned to dust. Wang Lin opened his eyes with a hint of worry. When he looked at the beast trap on his right wrist, his eyes became cold. The suction was powerful enough to use up a top-quality spirit stone. God-slaying war chariot. I'll have to find the time to see if you are fitting of that name. Wang Lin pondered for a bit. He didn't put the 7 top-quality spirit stones away, but kept them on him. From what he knew of the beast trap, it would likely suck spiritual energy from him after every use. It would be best to keep the spirit stones on him just in case. Wang Lin touched the beast trap, then he stood up and looked at the thunder toad. Throughout these 3 days, the thunder toad hadn't moved at all. It had guarded Wang Lin the entire time. When he saw Wang Lin standing up, the thunder toad picked Wang Lin up with its head, so Wang Lin was now riding on its back. Wang Lin smiled. Do you want to follow me? The thunder toad's stomach expanded and it let out a roar as a reply. Good. From today onward, I'll treat you the same as the mosquito beast. He slapped his bag of holding and the mosquito beast came out. He hadn't seen the mosquito beast in many years. It seemed to have grown. Its body was now the size of a small hill. Suzaku is a type of bird, so the mountain shaped like a bird really says it's shaped like a Suzaku. This will get a bit complicated later on because the person who's the strongest cultivator in the planet has the title of Suzaku. Its giant proboscis looked very threatening. The mosquito beast was very wary of the thunder toad, so it kept on letting out sounds. The thunder toad looked at the mosquito beast with a provoking expression. Wang Lin faintly smiled and jumped down from the thunder toad. He ignored the 2 beasts staring at each other and walked toward the pagoda. Standing in front of it, he clasped his hands, took a deep breath and said, Senior, Junior was asked by Senior Juyi to look after you for 1,000 years. The immortal graveyard will be very dangerous, so I would like to ask Senior to lend me a celestial sword. With that, Wang Lin bowed and walked into the pagoda. At the top floor, Wang Lin saw the white-robed female corpse. The female corpse was lying on a bed of celestial jade. There was no movement at all. Beside her were 2 celestial swords, one big and one small, releasing waves of celestial spiritual energy. Looking at the 2 celestial swords, Wang Lin began to ponder. His gaze locked onto the larger sword more than the smaller one. Wang Lin felt like this large sword looked familiar when he first saw it. However, it was too dangerous to really think about it back then. After he came back, he was with Li Muan the whole time, so he didn't have time to think about anything else. Now that he was looking at it after everything was over, that feeling of familiarity was even stronger. I must have seen this sword somewhere before, Wang Lin pondered for a long time before reaching out to the sword. There wasn't any discomfort, as he held the large celestial sword in his hand. This sword could no longer be considered a sword, but a rectangular sign. Sign. Wang Lin was startled and began to ponder. After a long time, his eyes lit up and he shouted, Wealth. It was wealth. When Wang Lin was in the Hengyu sect, he was given a token from his master to pick out a flying sword. The one he picked was the most ridiculous flying sword in the Hengyu sect, Wealth. Wang Lin walked down the pagoda filled with confusion. He stood outside the pagoda staring at the large sword. Memories from more than 400 years ago played in his mind. Thinking back to the moment when he first saw Wealth, he felt very regretful. He could still recall the full golden body sword. However, it didn't shine because of the quality of the sword. It was due to the layer of gold coating the surface. The gold wasn't even used to hide a valuable sword. What was under the gold was the most common kind of iron. Holding the sword in his hand, Wang Lin remembered 2 giant gems on the hilt of Wealth. However, the 2 gems had no spiritual energy at all. They were only there for looks. Even the tassels of Wealth were made from pieces of gold. Wealth disappeared within the void when Wang Lin's bag of holding was destroyed. If it wasn't for this celestial sword, Wang Lin wouldn't have remembered Wealth. However, looking at it now, besides the 2 giant gems and the gold tassels, the 2 swords were shockingly similar. Wang Lin's eyes sparkled. He didn't believe that this was a coincidence. Could it be that the creator of Wealth once saw this celestial sword? But that made no sense either. That senior from Zhao must have only been a nascent soul cultivator at most. How could he have gone to the celestial realm and seen the sword that was hidden until the white-robed woman called for it? Wang Lin began to ponder. He began to recall the life of that senior that was recorded on the sign next to wealth. That person was originally useless in the Hengyu sect, but was able to save the Hengyu sect from a disaster once. Then he died and left behind this large sword for future disciples. A completely useless person was able to save the Hengyu sect. I didn't think about it too much back then, but thinking about it now, that senior must have had some secret. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. He once again looked at the celestial sword in his hand. This celestial sword has already lost its soul, so it's a lot weaker. If I want to use it at its full power, I need a sword soul for it. Thinking about this, Wang Lin slapped his bag of holding. Come out, Shuligua. A pillar of grey smoke shot out from the bag and turned into Shuligua. After he came out, he pounded his chest. He had a very excited look in his eyes. Shuligua roared a few times. I'm finally out, ha ha. At this moment, the thunder toad and the mosquito beast that were staring at each other turned around and looked at Shuligua. Shuligua quickly became quiet when he saw the two beasts. Wang Lin's right hand reached out and grabbed Shuligua. Shuligua let out a scream as Wang Lin threw him into the celestial sword. The sword suddenly trembled and the golden color on it dimmed. Wang Lin frowned and pointed at his brow. Wandering souls came out one by one and entered the celestial sword. The sword's color darkened again. Soon, it became black. Wang Lin pressed his right hand on the sword. After pondering for a while, he muttered to himself, using wandering souls as the sword spirit can only activate a part of the sword's power. If I use a soul devourer, then I should be able to use more of its power. Sadly, I don't have enough time, but I must go capture a soul devourer in the future. Wang Lin stood up and put the sword away. He then touched the pagoda, causing it to immediately shrink. He put it away inside his bag of holding. Then Wang Lin took a breath, put away the thunder toad and mosquito beast, and then disappeared. In the old Jew's house at the apricot flower village, a woman was looking at a baby girl with a tender gaze. Are you your dad went to get you some ginseng to help nourish your body. I don't know what is wrong with this child for her body to be so weak. The woman was holding the baby while singing a song from their village. The baby girl's breathing was steady. It seemed she had already fallen asleep. After making sure that the baby had completely fallen asleep, the woman put the baby down and kissed her on the forehead before going to the kitchen to prepare food. Just as the woman left, another person appeared in the room. Wang Lin stared at the baby girl with tenderness in his eyes. His hand trembled as he gently touched the baby and whispered, "Wan. I forgot what day, month, and year it was that we met outside the Sea of Devils, but I remember your smiling yet sad expression toward me." The baby girl's eyelashes trembled as her clear eyes opened and silently stared at Wang Lin. Because her nascent soul was asleep, the body was too weak to hold any of her memories. Although even though she couldn't remember his name, his voice, or his appearance, the feeling of him was something forever engraved in her. The baby girl's gaze toward Wang Lin was no longer clear, but filled with confusion. Even she didn't notice the tear that fell from eye. Wang Lin's heart ached as he stared at the baby girl. You gave me one teardrop, and I was able to see everything in your heart. Wang Lin looked at the baby girl for a very long time. Time passed by, but she was still holding her gaze. I'll come to pick you up, Wang Lin softly whispered before leaving. Just as he left, water filled the baby girl's eyes, and she began to cry. The woman who was cooking in the other room quickly came into the room, picked up the baby girl, and started to comfort her. The baby girl's cry soon stopped, but she was still looking toward outside the room. Her eyes are filled with confusion. Tai Yang sat down cross-legged in the cave while he guarded the baby girl. He had gotten used to being in half-closed door cultivation for the last year. Half a year ago, Yu Fei messaged him to switch, but he rejected the offer. After Tai Yang entered the cultivation world, he hadn't experienced anything like what he had experienced in this last year. He had his divine sense spread out across the whole village every day. He knew every household and every person in the village. This feeling was very mysterious. In fact, Tai Yang had recently given up cultivating and had immersed himself in the mortal world. Wang Lin walked into the cave. When he saw Tai Yang, his eyes suddenly became focused. Tai Yang quickly stood up to greet Wang Lin. Wang Lin said, "Not bad compared to Lu Fei. All you have to do is keep this up and you can reach the soul formation stage. However, remember that you have to reach the peak of the late stage of nascent soul first." Tai Yang was startled. He quickly nodded. Wang Lin pondered for a bit before taking out a time domain carving. He said, "I'm giving this to you. Study it well." Tai Yang quietly stared at the wooden carving. Wang Lin sat on top of the mosquito beast and flew toward the immortal graveyard. At this moment, inside the Sea of Devils, there was something stirring within the chaotic broken stars. In the Sea of Blood inside the land of the ancient god. The Sea of Blood looked very different from before. Most of the pillars were gone, only the one Tar Sen was sitting on was left. There were less than 100 cultivators inside the Sea of Blood. Each of them had a red splinter on their forehead. All of them were silently cultivating. Among these people, there were a lot of people that Wang Lin was familiar with, such as Ancient Emperor. Each of them were releasing a demonic aura that smelled like blood. As they cultivated, the blood in the blood sea slowly entered their bodies. On the pillar that Tar Sen was sitting on sat a man with long, red hair. His head was down. On the ground below him there were countless words carved by his fingernails. It was just one word carved over and over again. Wang Lin. This red-haired man was Tar Sen, the one who obtained the inheritance of strength from the ancient god. His hair covered his face, but his eyes filled with hatred were visible. Wang Lin, the lifespan of the ancient god's body is reaching its limit. Once that happens, I will be able to escape from here. Wang Lin, you better not die. Continue keeping that inheritance of knowledge safe for me. This video will end here.